If you are here right now, it is probably because you are tired of feeling that other people have access to your emotional control panel, that with a single word, look, or attitude, they can shift your mood, drain your energy, and pull you out of yourself. And maybe you have already noticed how exhausting this is, how it follows you into your thoughts, your sleep, your body, and even your sense of identity. Because over time, you start to believe that peace is fragile, that calm is temporary, and that certain people or situations will always have power over you. And Abraham Maslow would say that this experience is not a personal failure. It is a sign that something essential inside you has not yet been fully understood or met, because it is. View human beings are not chaotic creatures reacting randomly to the world. We are deeply organized around needs, and when those needs are unmet, they express themselves through tension, defensiveness, emotional reactivity, and the feeling of being constantly triggered. And the moment you understand this, your entire relationship with your emotions begins to shift. Maslow observed that most human suffering does not come from external events themselves, but from the way unmet needs distort our perception of those events. And this is especially true when it comes to interpersonal relationships, because other people become mirrors that reflect back our deepest insecurities, fears, and longings. And when you have an unmet need for safety, belonging, respect, or self-worth, your nervous system remains alert, always scanning for signs of threat or rejection. And this is why certain comments land so deeply while others pass unnoticed, because the trigger is not the comment, it is the need it touches. And until that need is consciously recognized and addressed, the reaction feels automatic, inevitable, and out of your control. Think about how quickly these reactions arise. Someone interrupts you and irritation spikes. Someone criticizes your work and shame floods your body. Someone ignores your message and anxiety takes over. Maslow would explain that these are deficiency reactions, responses that come from a sense of lack. And when you live from deficiency motivation, your emotional world becomes reactive by default, because your system is trying to protect what feels endangered inside you. And the tragedy is that most people never learn to identify the need beneath the reaction. They only learn to judge the reaction itself, telling themselves they are too sensitive, too angry, too weak, or too much. And this self-judgment only deepens the deficiency and makes the triggers stronger. Maslow believed that true psychological growth begins when a person shifts from reacting unconsciously to understanding consciously. And this shift does not require suppressing emotions, controlling anger, or forcing calm. It requires awareness, because awareness reveals the structure underneath the emotion. And once you see the structure, the emotion no longer needs to dominate your behavior, because it has fulfilled its purpose, which is to signal that something matters. And this is why understanding is so powerful. It does not fight the emotion, it dissolves its necessity. Now, pause for a moment and notice how often your triggers revolve around the same themes again and again. Maybe it is feeling disrespected, unseen, not good enough, or not safe to be yourself. And this repetition is not coincidence. Maslow would say it is diagnostic, because the psyche repeats what has not yet been resolved. And the people who trigger you are not random characters in your story. They are touching the same unmet need from different angles. And until you address that need directly, the pattern will continue. No matter how much you change jobs, relationships, or environments around this point in the reflection, I want to slow down and speak directly to you, because this is where many people begin to recognize themselves in what is being described. And that recognition matters. Ask yourself honestly, who is the person who triggers you most consistently right now, and what do you feel when you think of them? Not the story you tell yourself, but the raw sensation in your body. And if you are willing, I invite you to write this sentence in the comments exactly as it is. I am starting to understand what my triggers are really about. This is not about seeking validation. It is about naming your experience, because when one person names their inner struggle, it creates a bridge for others who have never felt safe enough to do the same. and that shared recognition is deeply healing. Maslow emphasized that unmet needs do not disappear with time. They become more entrenched and more reactive. And this is why telling yourself to just let it go rarely works, because letting go without understanding is simply suppression, and suppressed needs resurface as resentment, anxiety, burnout, or emotional numbness. And none of these states represent freedom. They represent avoidance, and Maslow was clear that avoidance blocks growth, because growth requires contact with reality, including inner reality. One of Maslow's most misunderstood ideas is self-actualization, because many people imagine it as a lofty, spiritual state disconnected from everyday emotions. But Maslow described self-actualized individuals as deeply human, deeply feeling, and deeply grounded, and what distinguished them was not a lack of emotion, but an integration of emotion. Their needs were acknowledged, their sense of self was internally anchored, and as a result, external events did not destabilize them in the same way, because their worth, safety, and identity were not constantly up for negotiation. When you stop letting people trigger you, it is not because people become kinder, more aware, or more respectful. It is because you stop asking them to meet needs they were never responsible for in the first place. And this is a radical shift, because it returns responsibility to where it belongs, inside you. And this responsibility is not a burden, it is liberation. Because once you own your needs, you can meet them consciously, instead of unconsciously demanding that others meet them through approval, attention, or compliance. As you begin this process, you may notice that your triggers start to reveal information instead of chaos. You might realize that anger often points to violated boundaries. Fear points to threatened safety. Shame points to wounded esteem, and sadness points to unmet belonging. And when you learn to read these signals instead of fighting them, you develop emotional literacy. And emotional literacy is one of the core foundations of psychological health. Maslow identified because it allows you to respond to life with intelligence instead of impulsive. This perspective feels different from what you're used to. And if you sense that this channel speaks to a deeper level of self-understanding, I invite you gently to like this video and subscribe to the channel, not out of pressure, but because this space exists for people who are ready to move beyond surface level advice and into real inner work. And by being here, you are choosing awareness over autopilot, which is the first step toward lasting change. As your awareness deepens, you may start to notice that many triggers are rooted in esteem needs. The need to feel competent, capable, and valued. And when esteem was conditional or inconsistent, earlier in life, criticism can feel devastating because it threatens your sense of identity. And Maslow emphasized that healthy esteem is not about constant praise. It is about self-respect. And when self-respect is internalized, feedback no longer feels like an attack. It becomes information you can evaluate calmly. Asterisk. Another powerful source of triggers lies in belonging needs. The need to feel accepted, included, and emotionally safe. And when belonging felt uncertain, or conditional rejection or indifference can feel unbearable, because the nervous system reacts as if survival itself is at risk. And until this need is consciously addressed through self-compassion, honest connection, and inner validation, the trigger remains active, regardless of how rational you try to be. Maslow was clear that you cannot transcend unmet foundational needs. And this is where many people become stuck. They try to be calm without building inner safety. They try to be confident without healing wounded esteem. And the result is emotional suppression, not freedom. And suppression always exacts a cost, eventually showing up as chronic stress, anxiety, or emotional collapse. As you continue listening, you may begin to realize that stopping being triggered is not about becoming invulnerable. It is about becoming integrated. Integration means that all parts of you, including the wounded ones, are acknowledged, understood, and included in your sense of self. And when this happens, those parts no longer need to hijack your reactions to get attention. And This is one of the most profound shifts a human being can experience. There is also a deep connection between triggers and meaning, and Maslow believed that humans suffer not only from unmet basic needs, but from a lack of purpose, coherence, and direction. And when life feels meaningless, even small frustrations can feel overwhelming because there is no larger context to hold them. And as you reconnect with values, purpose, and a sense of direction, triggers often lose their intensity because they are no longer the center of your psychological universe. Over time, you may notice that when someone attempts to provoke you, there is a pause where there used to be an explosion. And in that pause, you can sense the need underneath and choose how to respond. And this choice does not feel forced. It feels natural because it is aligned with your inner state. And this is what Maslow meant by psychological freedom, the ability to act from your whole self rather than from unmet need. This shift also transforms how you set boundaries, because boundaries rooted in awareness are calm, clear, and consistent, while boundaries rooted in reactivity are defensive, unstable, and exhausting. And when you stop being triggered, your boundaries become expressions of self-respect rather than weapons of self-protection. And this changes the quality of your relationships profoundly. You are finding value in this reflection. I want to gently remind you that subscribing to the channel helps ensure that this kind of depth-focused content continues to reach people who need it, and by supporting this space, you are participating in a community committed to growth, honesty, and inner responsibility. Maslow acknowledged that growth is demanding because it requires relinquishing the comfort of blaming others for how you feel. And while this can feel frightening, it is also empowering because it restores agency, and agency is the foundation of dignity. And when you reclaim agency, your emotional life becomes something you can work with rather than something that happens to you. As triggers lose their grip, you may also notice a change in how you perceive others. You begin to see that many people are acting from their own unmet needs, and this perspective does not excuse harmful behavior, but it does free you from personalization. And when you stop taking everything personally, your emotional energy becomes available for creativity, connection, and growth. Eventually, you may reach a point where being triggered feels like information rather than an emergency. And this is a profound shift because information invites curiosity, while emergencies demand reaction. And this transformation does not happen overnight, but with sustained awareness, it becomes your new baseline. Before we close, it is important to say clearly that this content is intended for inspirational and educational purposes. Only it does not replace professional psychological or medical advice. There is no official affiliation with Abraham Maslow or his estate. All references are shared under fair use and with deep respect for his legacy, and the intention here is to inspire self-awareness, self-responsibility, and inner growth. If there is one truth to carry with you, it is this: every trigger is pointing toward a need, and every need, when understood, brings you closer to wholeness. And the moment you stop fighting your reactions and start listening to them, you begin to reclaim your inner freedom. And that freedom is not distant or reserved for a few. It is available moment by moment to anyone willing to understand themselves deeply. And as you continue down this path of understanding yourself through the lens Abraham Maslow offered, you may begin to notice something that at first feels unsettling and later becomes deeply liberating, which is the realization that many of the emotional battles you thought were about other people were actually about unresolved relationships with your own needs and values. And this realization can feel disorienting because it removes familiar narratives. The story that someone else is the problem, the idea that peace will arrive once others change, the hope that external validation will finally settle your inner world. And yet when these narratives fall away, what remains is not emptiness, but clarity. Maslow understood that humans spend much of their lives operating from what he called deficiency motivation, a state in which behavior is driven by the attempt to fill inner gaps. And when you are motivated by deficiency, You are constantly negotiating with the world for reassurance, safety, approval, or control. And this negotiation is exhausting because it never truly resolves the underlying need, it only temporarily soothes it. And this is why being triggered feels cyclical. You calm down, only to be activated again by the next situation that touches the same unresolved place. As you move toward growth motivation, something begins to change. Your actions are no longer primarily about protecting yourself from emotional pain, but about expressing who you are. And this distinction is subtle but profound, because when your behavior is rooted in growth rather than deficiency, external events lose their power to define you. And Maslow observed that people in this state are not emotionally flat, they are emotionally mature. Their feelings arise and pass without overwhelming their sense of self. You might begin to recognize that many of your triggers are linked to moments when you abandon yourself, when you silence your needs, dismiss your boundaries, or betray your values in order to maintain approval or avoid conflict. And when this happens, resentment often follows, not only toward others, but toward yourself. And Maslow would say that this inner conflict is a sign that your authentic self is asking to be acknowledged. And until it is, triggers will continue to arise as reminders. One of the most challenging aspects of this journey is realizing that stopping being triggered requires honesty, not just about others, but about yourself. It requires asking questions like, where am I compromising my truth? Where am I seeking validation instead of alignment? And where am I expecting others to give me what I have not yet given myself? And these questions are uncomfortable, but they are also empowering, because they shift your focus from control to clarity. As your clarity increases, you may notice that your emotional reactions slow down, not because you are trying to control them, but because there is less internal conflict fueling them. And Maslow described this as an increase in inner congruence, the alignment between your values, your actions, and your self-perception. And when congruence increases, emotional volatility decreases, because there is less inner tension seeking expression. You may also find that compassion emerges naturally, not as a moral obligation, but as a byproduct of understanding, because when you see how deeply human behavior is shaped by unmet needs, it becomes difficult to personalize everything. And this compassion does not make you passive. It makes you discerning. You can recognize pain without absorbing it. You can acknowledge someone's struggle without taking responsibility for it. And this distinction is essential for emotional freedom. At this stage, many people notice that their relationships begin to change, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, not because they are forcing new dynamics, but because their internal posture has shifted. And Maslow noted that psychologically healthy individuals often become stabilizing presences, not by fixing others, but by no longer participating in reactive patterns. And this alone can alter relational systems if you are finding yourself reflecting deeply as you listen. This is a good moment to gently remind you that staying connected to this kind of content can support your process. So if you feel inclined, subscribing to the channel is simply a way of staying in conversation with these ideas and continuing to explore your inner world with guidance rooted in humanistic psychology. As you continue to integrate this understanding, you may encounter moments where old triggers resurface, and this does not mean you are failing. It means you are encountering deeper layers. And Maslow was clear that growth is not linear. It unfolds in stages, and revisiting old patterns with new awareness is part of the process. And each time you recognize a trigger more quickly and respond with more understanding, you are reinforcing a new way of being. There is also an important shift that occurs when you stop equating emotional intensity with truth. Just because something feels overwhelming does not mean it reflects reality. It reflects significance, and learning to differentiate between emotional significance and objective truth is a key developmental step Maslow identified in psychologically mature individuals, because it allows you to feel deeply without being ruled by feeling. Over time, you may notice that your inner dialogue changes. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this showing me?" And this shift transforms triggers from threats into teachers. And when emotions are allowed to teach rather than dominate, they lose their destructive power. Another subtle change that often occurs is a reduction in the need to explain yourself, defend yourself, or justify your reactions. Because as your sense of self becomes more stable, external misunderstanding feels less threatening, and Maslow emphasized that self-actualized individuals are not preoccupied with managing impressions because their identity is internally anchored. This does not mean you withdraw from the world or stop caring about others. It means you engage from a place of choice rather than compulsion. And this difference is felt not only by you, but by those around you, because interactions become less charged and more authentic. As your inner world becomes more coherent, you may also experience a deeper sense of meaning, not derived from external achievement, but from alignment with your values. And Maslow believed that this sense of meaning acts as a buffer against emotional reactivity because it provides context and perspective. And when you know why you are here, what matters to you, and how you choose to live, minor provocations lose their capacity to destabilize you. It is also important to acknowledge that choosing this path can feel lonely at times because not everyone around you will understand your shift, and some people may even resist it because your calm no longer feeds familiar dynamics. And Maslow recognized that growth can create distance from those who remain invested in reactive patterns, but he also noted that it opens the door to deeper, more authentic connections with those who are ready. As you move forward, you may find that moments which once triggered anger now evoke curiosity. Moments that once produced anxiety now invite reflection, and moments that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable. And these changes are not the result of willpower. They are the natural outcome of understanding and integration. Eventually, you reach a point where being triggered feels less like a personal failing and more like a signal that invites inquiry. And this inquiry becomes almost automatic, not because you force it, but because it aligns with who you are becoming. And Maslow would say that this is a sign of psychological maturation, the movement from unconscious reaction to conscious response. Before closing this reflection, it is important to return to the foundation of everything discussed here, which is that your emotional reactions are meaningful. They are not enemies to be defeated, but messages to be understood. And when you treat them with curiosity instead of condemnation, you create the conditions for growth. This content has an reminder is intended solely for inspirational and educational purposes. It does not replace professional guidance, and there is no official affiliation with Abraham Maslow or his estate. All ideas are shared under fair use with respect for his legacy, and the intention of this channel is to support self-awareness, inner responsibility, and psychological growth. If you take one thing with you, let it be this: the moment you stop asking, "How do I stop feeling this?" and start asking, "What is this feeling asking of me?" you begin to reclaim your power. And that power does not come from controlling others or suppressing yourself. It comes from understanding your needs, honoring your values, and choosing to live from alignment rather than reaction. And in that alignment, triggers lose their grip because they no longer have anything to protect or prove, and what remains is a quieter, stronger, more grounded sense of self that can move through the world with clarity, presence, and freedom.